clean up and
Alrighty.
We don't have time for that.
Okay.
So we were.
Hold on. Are you muted?
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work very well.
No, you can unmute.
Oh, really?
Just push the button.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks for letting me know. Well, glad you got your voice back.
I mean, were you expecting to be gone forever?
No, really weren't.
Okay.
And we're glad.
Uh-huh.
We are glad. We hide it well, but we're glad. Hold on. Jody's phone is on silent, so I can't hear anything. All right, try again.
Oh, you might have to push the top thing to make it speaker versus...
Hold on. Why is it so soft?
You probably have to hit that top.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Just a really cool button.
All right, try again.
Okay, can we have a bit of Chazara because last week was Purim and I missed it?
Last week was Purim. I'll check my calendar on that one.
Shushan Purim, I'm in Yerushalayim.
I didn't think it was called Yerushalayim Purim. It's called Shushan Purim. You live in Shushan?
No, but we had 3 days of Purim last week and 3 days of Siren this week, so I could use a bit of Chazara.
I gotcha. All right, let's get started here.
Thanks.
All right, so what we talked about last week. So we actually got up to in Vav.
That was the second paragraph.
There's a Vehine in Vav. Yeah. In mine, it's in the middle of a paragraph.
Is it like only 3 lines into the paragraph?
It's only a few lines in, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we finished it.
No. Okay. All right. So basically, what we talked about last week was the idea of the mitzvahs that we have to do in the day, in the morning, are there to help rectify the low state of the world that took place overnight. As we said, the nighttime is the time that the forces of evil are manifest, and that has the ability to bring the whole world down with it. And the mitzvahs that we do first thing in the morning are designed to help alleviate the state that the world was put into at night by doing these things in the morning and raising the level of the world. So the first thing we said was netilas yadayim, washing the hands and removing the tumah that rests upon a person by doing so. And as we rid ourselves of the tumah, we also rid the world of the tumah that has engulfed it as well overnight. And he also mentioned that this is an important preface to davening. In order to have a proper davening, it's important that we are in a state of purity, so this way the davening is done appropriately. And this way we're prepared. We're prepared for davening. We clean ourselves both spiritually and physically. And he said that the physical cleanliness is also connected to the spiritual cleanliness. So if there is the physical cleanliness, that also is part of that process of purity. Okay, now, then he completed that and said we have two things that come after that, which are more connected to davening, and they are tzitzis and tefillin. So in Vav, we started talking about tzitzis, and the idea there is that Hashem wants all of us to be as engulfed in Kedusha as possible, to be fully enveloped in an atmosphere of holiness. And that will start with the body, which we've taken care of by washing the hands. And then it goes to the next step, which is the clothing. And the clothing, by having tzitzis, is infused with this holiness, and that surrounds us as we go through our day, and certainly as we daven. And that is the first level of the mitzvah of tzitzis. Then he said the second level, a deeper concept, and that is the idea that a person should be in uniform, that a person should be showing their commitment to Hashem, and wearing tzitzis is a way to do that. By wearing tzitzis, we're showing that we are part of Hashem's nation, and we are keeping His mitzvahs. As we mentioned, the strings and the knots allude to the number of mitzvahs, and by wearing those, we are showing that we are kind of in uniform, so to speak, as we serve Hashem throughout our day. Okay, and then we mentioned, just as an aside, my own thought. This is not what Ramchal is saying, but for women, I was thinking that the idea of tznius in their clothing accomplishes the same thing. It's the idea that we're showing that we are committed to Hashem and that we are subservient to Him, and that's why we do what He wants us to do, even if it's not necessarily what we would want to do. Okay. All right. Good?
Yep.
Okay. So now we'll continue. V'hine. Right. Nitan la'adam liyos misaken es kol habriya. A person is able to rectify all of creation. As we explained back in the very first section. So it will come out that a person is serving Hashem, performing His service, involved in His work, Shehu Hamid Habriya Asher Bara, and that is what upholds the world that Hashem created, in the status that Hashem wants it to be. Meaning, when we do the mitzvahs, not only are we doing what we're supposed to be doing, but we are bringing the world to a state that Hashem wants it to be in, and that is accomplished through the mitzvahs that we do. V'ulam, however, this comes from the actions of man, the things that a person does. That he acts the way the Torah wants him to act. He follows the commandments the way they are upon him. Amnam, however, the rule, the bottom line of this entire service, stands on one point. Shehu, and this is, that a person is subservient to Hashem. That's it. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for everyone to act in a way that shows that we are subservient to Hashem. That this idea of rectifying creation was given over to mankind, and has been put into our hands. It's up to us. Which is why we'll be successful through what we do. And our actions are able to accomplish that these things get done. So what he's saying is that these mitzvahs all have a common denominator. The goal of all of these is the same, and that is to connect with Hashem, to show our subservience and our complete subjugation to Hashem. And that is the point of all the mitzvahs. And when we do that, we're not just doing what we're told to do. We're actually upholding the world. We're bringing the world to a place which is the way Hashem wants it to be. We're bringing the world to a level that Hashem wants it to exist on. And that happens through our mitzvahs that we do. Now, one interesting point that he brings here is that this is given to us. This is our job. Hashem has given over the keys, so to speak, to the workings of the world, to the continuity, to the functioning of the world, to the actions of mankind. Hashem gave that to us. Hashem is not simply allowing the world to go on its own, and Hashem is not keeping it stable. Hashem has given us the ability to do that, and that's something that we have to take seriously as a responsibility that each and every one of us has. Okay, good? Okay. However, klal mitzias hayais masa ze al ha'adam. This reality of having this burden upon the shoulders of mankind, nikra ulay yisbarach she'alav, is called the yoke of Hashem upon a person. Ka'al ha'adain al avdai, like the yoke of a master on his servant. V'davar zeh mischazek al yedei pratim yeduim. And this is strengthened through specific ways. Shetilai bahem ha'adin baruch hu, that Hashem made them rely on and dependent on. Mechlalam harishum v'hatziyun b'tziyun jesel tzitzis. And included in this is the symbol, the emblem of the tzitzis. So meaning to say that Hashem has given us some specific mitzvahs that are to serve as ways of showing this subservience, of showing our connection to Hashem, of our commitment to Hashem. And that is found in the tzitzis, among other things, but it's found in the tzitzis. So the ability to perform the mitzvahs is the ability to keep the world where it needs to be. Our opportunity to wear tzitzis is our opportunity to uphold the world. So we have to understand that this is one example of many mitzvahs. Many mitzvahs have this ability that they keep the world stable, they keep the world where it needs to be. It needs to have enough holiness going through it, enough purity going through it to keep it in a good place. And that's up to us. That's what we're doing. So there are certain ones that he's saying are perhaps more pointedly acting in this vein, meaning that if the goal of all this is to show our subservience to Hashem, certainly something that we are wearing is going to do that very well. So by wearing tzitzis, we are showing our subservience, and that is, in a sense, a bit more clearly indicative of our mission with our mitzvahs, because it's showing this is our uniform. We are wearing the emblem of Hashem. And again, I would say the same thing applies to tznius, especially in today's day and age where no one really dresses tznius, except people who are careful about it, the Jewish people. Other than that, the vast majority of the world does not. And that's certainly a show of our commitment to being Hashem's army, so to speak, here in this world. And that's what we do. Okay. Good? All right. Okay, moving on. Okay, however, in addition to this being a constant mitzvah, meaning a person can always wear tzitzis, asu mimenu chazal tikun mitikuni atfila. Our sages established that it should be part of the process of davening. Meaning, Chazal saw that it's important to have this level that we've been describing incorporated into our davening. And this is accomplished by being enwrapped in a talis during davening. And what it accomplishes is our acceptance of the yoke of Hashem, as we've mentioned. Using this power, the strength of what the tzitzis represent, of what they mean to us as we wrap ourselves in them, and we show that we are the servants of Hashem, we're going in uniform as we are committed to Hashem, to do all of that, the Hainu Tikkun Ha'olam, which is upholding the world, the Kamosh Zechanu, as we mentioned, that is the best way to approach davening. So if we can first declare our subservience and then go daven, that is the best way to daven. Because if a person doesn't truly commit to following Hashem, then when they come to ask Hashem for things or they come to praise Hashem, it's going to be, half-hearted, so to speak, because you're not committed. You're saying the right things, but you're not doing the right things. You're not showing your commitment. So by showing your commitment, and before you daven, wrapping yourself in the tzitzis to show I am a servant of Hashem, that's the proper way to come to davening. And this way, when we approach Hashem and we thank Him and we ask Him, we're doing it in the proper state of mind in which we are committed to Hashem's service.
Just to clarify, he's not asking the question why wear talis, and since he's asking why make a certain time to put on a talis if we already have a constant mitzvah anyway.
B.
B, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so here's the thing though. Not everybody wears talis.
Correct.
Like, I'm not talking about women. In this case, I'm actually not. Just rare.
What?
But here, I know what do you call it? Men don't wear them until they're married.
Correct.
So,
What's going on until they get married?
yeah.
So even before marriage, we still wear tzitzis.
Right.
Not a talus, but it's the
Right.
same concept. Is you're
So it's
still
like-
wrapping yourself in tzitzis. Now,
Right.
talus is more overt.
Okay.
It's an outer garment, so
Got
it's more engulfing, more encompassing. But the mitzvah is still to wrap yourself in the talus and the tzitzis just as well,
So it's
which
like-
is what you're doing.
It's like double wrapping.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because I mean, that was something that was like new to me because I know that my dad got his talis when he had his bar mitzvah.
Right.
Which is different. So that was something I didn't quite understand. Like especially when you're talking about like I could understand like before bar mitzvah age not, but they're wearing tzitzis anyway.
Yeah,
So,
we start at 3.
so
Sfardim start at bar mitzvah actually with a talis. So my sister married a Sfardi, and
Yeah, some Moroccan Sardim start a talus as soon as they're old enough to daven.
Yeah. So do
5-year-olds are already wearing a talus.
So do Iranians.
Iranians, yeah. So yeah, there's
do it bar mitzvah?
again the idea of the tzitzis is always there. The idea of the talus is more specific to davening today. It didn't used to be. It used to be talus was all day also, just like tefillin were. But yeah, that just depends on custom. But tzitzis, the concept of tzitzis is certainly fulfilled for bar mitzvah and certainly earlier in most circles.
I just wonder if because the talus was added when, like, was that something that, let's say, the sages ordained, right?
The idea of wearing talus or tzitzis during davening was something that the Chachamim put an extra emphasis on.
Right.
But the mitzvah is all the time biblically.
Right.
It's always a mitzvah.
I just wonder if maybe they did that because people weren't wearing tzitzis.
Well, he just said what he did. He said because you want to be able to envelop this idea of being in the service of Hashem while you're davening.
Right.
Make it that much more.
So here's the thing. Let's understand the context here. The mitzvah of tzitzis is when you're wearing a 4-cornered garment to make sure there's tzitzis on the corners, right? So Chazal said, we want to make sure you're doing that during davening.
Right. So we're going to add this extra.
No, that's all they said. They said, we want to make sure you're doing that during davening.
Right.
So now, when the larger talus versus the the one that's worn over versus the one that's worn under, when that all changed or developed, I would assume initially it was always an outer garment,
Yeah.
and then once we were in the diaspora, we were in exile, we probably couldn't wear them out like that all day, so we probably had to switch to what was under. But perhaps when we were in shul and therefore we weren't out in public, we were able to still keep it, the outer one. But the difference between the two is negligible. It doesn't really matter. The point is that you're doing tzitzis. And Chazal said, we want to make sure you're doing this mitzvah, which you don't have a specific time to do. We want to make sure you're doing it during davening.
Right.
Because it's a critical component of what davening is all about. And that is, you got to first start by subjugating yourself, then you can enter into conversation with Hashem.
Makes sense.
Okay, good?
but it seems from what I understood that the talus and tefillin would have gone together in the times of Chazal. That you wouldn't necessarily want to wear one without the other.
You wouldn't necessarily wear one without the other. Okay, so we'll get to tefillin. That's what's coming next. But back in the day, talus and tefillin were constant mitzvos, meaning people would fulfill them whenever they could, which means all day. During daylight, people would wear both talus and tefillin. Today, we don't wear tefillin all day anymore. At least most people don't. But we can wear tzitzis all day because we wear them, under our shirts. So therefore, it's not a big deal. So that we certainly can continue to do.
There's a kollel in the old city that they do talus and tefillin all day. And as long as it's daylight, you'll see it, and it's actually quite neat.
Yeah. There's certainly nothing wrong as long as a person is able to keep their mind focused, because you can't lose track of the fact that you're wearing tefillin.
Right.
So to be able to do that all day requires a lot of focus, and also you have to keep your body clean. If you need to go to the bathroom, you can't be wearing your tefillin. So you have to be very regimented to be able to do that, which is why it's not common anymore. But certainly there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, back in the day, that people wore them all day. Yep. Okay. All right, good? Moving on?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ramchal continues and says, however, in tefillin, the concept of tefillin, who yaser gadol min hatzitzis, is much greater than that of the tzitzis. It's a lot greater. Harbe. And this is, Ki nasan habar yisbarach Yisrael, sheyiyu mamshichim aleim hemshech mamish mikdusha yisbarach. V'yisatruba. Hashem gave us the ability to draw down an actual connection, an extension of Hashem's holiness, and to crown ourselves with it. But I find in a way, shechol b'chinaysayim hanafshiyos v'hagufaniyos yechasu tachas ha'or hagadol hazeh, that all of the different aspects and parts of the physical and the spiritual will be connected to this great light. The Yesuknu by Tikkun Gadol, and they will be rectified in a significant way. V'umash Amar Akasav, and this is what the pasuk means when it says, "V'ra'u kol amei haaretz kishem Hashem nekra alecha," that all of the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you. V'tala inyan zeh b'mitzvah zu, and Hashem connected this concept into this mitzvah, with all of the different rules and details that are involved in this mitzvah. Meaning to say that Hashem has given us a mitzvah in which we can and do draw from Hashem's holiness itself upon ourselves. So we're actually accessing, we're channeling Hashem's holiness through the mitzvah of tefillin. So it's not just the idea of a uniform. It's not just the idea of a symbolism, of an association, but this is an active conduit. This is a connection of Hashem's holiness into us, so much so that it affects all of our spiritual and physical parts. Now, this is not true of any other mitzvah necessarily, but certainly of tefillin, this is how it works. So when we're wearing tefillin, we're not simply donning a uniform. We're actually drawing upon Hashem's holiness itself and bringing it into our being. Okay.
And that explains why there's a difference in the halachos between tefillin and tzitzis.
Yeah, there are significant differences between tefillin and tzitzis. You can walk into a bathroom with your tzitzis. You can't do anything like that with tefillin. Yeah, amongst many other ideas, but yes, for sure. There's a very significant difference. So when we're thinking about tefillin, we have to realize this is it's a conduit. It's connection between us and Hashem's holiness. It's bringing it into ourselves. Okay.
So then why not wear tefillin on days like Chol Hamoed?
Why don't we wear tefillin on days of Chol Hamoed? Okay, good question. Well, some people do. That's the first answer. Now, the better question would be why don't we wear them on Shabbos and Yantiv? That's the better question.
Well, that I know because of the Eidos.
Well, that's the same answer. Chol Hamoed is just part of that, according to those who don't wear tefillin. Meaning to say that on Shabbos and Yantiv we don't wear tefillin. The reason is because the Torah calls Shabbos an ice, a sign of the connection between us and Hashem. So that same sign that tefillin accomplishes, Shabbos and Yontif itself accomplishes. So when it's Shabbos or Yontif, we have that connection inherently. It doesn't need to be accomplished through tefillin, and therefore there is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. And according to some, Chalamayit is included in that. But on a regular day, we don't have that added degree of connection, and that's where the tefillin come in. Okay. Okay. Let's make sure there's nothing here I wanted to share. Okay. So this pasuk of Ro Kol Ami Haaretz Kishem Hashem Nikra Alecha is that the people will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you. A couple of well-known stories with the Vilna Gaon and the Ramban and others, where non-Jews were completely awestruck when seeing these great people wearing their tefillin, because the degree of holiness that these people's tefillin was able to bring into the world was palatable to non-Jews even. And that just goes to show you how much power the tefillin really have to be able to draw upon the holiness of Hashem. Okay, let's move on. The Amnam. Shnei Evarim Rashiyim Nimtzaim Ba'adam. There are two, principal organs in a person. Ovahem neshama misgaberes tigbares gadol. And within these, the neshama is very powerful. V'hem, and they are hamayach v'halev, the brain and the heart. V'tziva habar yisbarach, and Hashem commanded she'imashech ha'or hazeh al hamayach tchila, ad tzilah shal reish. Hashem commanded that this light of Hashem should be drawn to the brain through the tefillin placed upon the head. V'yisukan by hamayach v'neshama shabai, and through that the neshama, which is contained within the brain, should receive a rectification. V'yispashit achar kach al halev, and then it will spread from there to the heart. Al yedei tefillah shel yad shekenegdai, through the arm tefillin that are placed opposite the heart. Yisukan gam hu bai, and then the heart too will be rectified through this light. And through this, nimtza ha'adam kulai, it will turn out that the entire person, b'chol b'chinaisav, with all of its different elements, nichlal tachas hemshech hakdusha hazayis, will be incorporated under this degree, this manner of holiness that is brought about through the tefillin. Umisater ba, and the person is crowned with this holiness. Umiskadesh kedusha rabba, and is the person is given a sanctified with a very high degree of holiness.
So I have a thought on this.
Okay.
It's just kind of it's a little opposite. Not understood opposite, but we say that the neshama fills the brain or goes to the brain first, right? And then goes through to the heart.
Yep.
When you think about what happened when at Sinai, we said we will what was it?
We will do and we will hear.
And right.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that phrase "we will do" is more of the heart first, and then the brain after. So it's kind of like opposite. Now I realize that we're probably not like they're two totally different things, but like that always makes me think of it as like it goes to the brain first and then to the heart. But
why is doing heart more than brain?
Because they didn't like it's one of those things where if I pick up a mitzvah to do, and I don't quite understand it, the idea is do it anyway. You'll understand it later, right? So my heart says this is something that I need to be doing versus
is it your
my
heart
brain.
or is it your head?
To me, it's my heart because my brain means I have to understand why I'm doing it, right?
Or you understand that it's a mitzvah that you should be doing, and whether you understand it or not, you're going to do it because that's what Hashem said, and your heart's just being dragged along.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of see it the other way. Like, so if I'm compelled to do something, I'm usually not using my especially if it's something that doesn't appear logical.
Okay, so let me read this to you, which I wanted to share. I think it will address what you're saying.
Okay.
So Rav Chaim here writes, and he's got it here in English, so I'll just read it to you here. The neshama primarily rules over the brain, but its influence extends to the heart, which is the source of a person's will. Okay?
Neshama is the source?
The heart is the source.
The heart is?
So the heart is the source of the will, but the neshama extends its influence over that will. So the will is ultimately a balance, but the neshama is able to, if we allow it, to create the will that we want to do things. So certainly when we said Nasa v'nishma, that was a will that was heavily influenced, hopefully, by our brains, and we weren't just saying it emotionally without thinking. Hopefully it was a logical and emotional experience that we fully committed to just doing what Hashem says without rationalizing it. So, okay, now he continues here. In Mesilas, yes, the neshama primarily rules over the brain, but its influence extends to the heart, which is the source of a person's will. Right? Halev chaimed. The heart is what wants. The heart is what wants things. So that
desire. I don't know if a decision is considered a desire.
well, our decisions are based on what we want.
Maybe.
Always. Every decision is based on what we want.
You mean if you want to follow something you don't understand? Or
So,
you want to do
Every single decision is what we want. Sometimes what I want is the right thing. Sometimes what I want is the wrong thing. But my decision is always what I want. Hopefully, we get ourselves to a point that what I want is always the right thing. So even if it's not what my body wants, perhaps, right? My body might want to eat the food that's not kosher. But me, as a person, I ultimately want to follow Hashem. So that will be my overriding desire. But yeah, every decision is based on what we want. Okay, now in Mesilas Yesharim Ramchal writes that the heart is the king that rules over all the other parts of the body. And if it's not brought into the service of Hashem, the actions of the other limbs are meaningless. All right, read it one more time. Mesilas Yesharim writes that the heart is the king that rules over all the other parts of the body. And if it is not brought into the service of Hashem, the actions of the other limbs are meaningless. So meaning to say, if a person just does things, even though they happen to be the right thing, that doesn't mean that they're going to accomplish for the person. It doesn't mean they're going to be growing for him. In other words, he won't be accomplishing his growth through these mitzvahs if his heart's not in it. The heart's got to be in it.
You just said that his heart is automatically in it.
A decision. There's lots of things that we do that aren't decisions. Simple. You're walking down the street and well, no, that's not a good example. Hold on. Let me think of one that's
Reaction type thing?
no, by rote. So you do it by rote, or you do it for ulterior motives. Okay. Person comes to shul in the morning and he puts on his tefillin. Why is he putting on his tefillin? So for some people, it's because that's just what we do. It's not a decision. Am I putting on tefillin or am I putting on tefillin? I put on tefillin because it's what I do. I just put on tefillin. It's not because I have a desire to put on my tefillin. It's because I have a desire to fit in with other people. Maybe it's because I have a desire not to be shunned. Maybe it's because I have a desire to associate. Now, some of those things might be good things. And putting on tefillin is certainly a good thing, but if there's no heart in it, then it's not really accomplishing anything as far as your growth. But it's not a decision at that point. A decision is where you have a dilemma. You have a choice. Am I going to or am I not going to? And I have to decide, what am I doing? That is always the heart.
I mean, if a person is leaning towards one side, he doesn't have a decision.
So, Rav Dassler says there's two types of decisions. There are decisions which are actual decisions, and there are decisions which he calls technical decisions. Technical decisions aren't part of Bechira. In other words, if I decide I'm going to take this route to get to my destination or that route, that's a technical decision. I decide to wear this shirt or that shirt, that's a technical decision. Those aren't decisions that actually mean anything in my life. Those aren't decisions that involve Bechira at all. And those could be anything. Those could be convenience, those could be, taste, whatever. Those aren't real decisions. Real decisions where Bechira comes into play is actual choices that make a difference.
Like attending this class. It's not a rote decision. It's a very important decision that we make.
A very difficult commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since you made it an hour earlier and I worked today.
I didn't make it an hour earlier, sorry.
Well, anyway, next week you'll be fine. But I was just going to share, Volby also talks about that quite a bit. And he says a huge amount of people go for their entire lives without making a single real decision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely true. Definitely people who just go through life doing what they need to do without ever trying to grow. That's very true. Okay. Okay. Just trying to see if we're at a good spot. Let's continue a little bit here.
We get to Ches.
Yeah, we have it online.
Yeah, let's get to Ches. V'al zeh, and through this, nimtza ha'adam kuloi, the person will find themselves completely, b'chol b'chinaisa, with all his different aspects, nichlal tachas hemshech ha'kedusha hazais, u'mesater bay. He is completely under the influence of this holiness, and he is crowned with this, u'miskadach kedusha rabba, and he is sanctified with a great degree of holiness as he draws this holiness of Hashem down into and on himself. However, there are lots of details involved in the proper fulfillment of this mitzvah. And every one of those details is necessary to accomplish this rectification that we're describing here, based on the different aspects of mankind himself. So every single detail in the mitzvah of tefillin has a purpose. And in order for it to accomplish what we've just described, there has to be a commitment to doing this mitzvah in the exact right way. If it's not done exactly right, it's just not going to work. Do we understand why? No, we don't understand why. If the tefillin is slightly out of place, it could be if a person doesn't fulfill the mitzvah at all, and they've accomplished nothing. I shouldn't say they accomplished nothing. They haven't fulfilled this mitzvah, they haven't accomplished what we've been describing here. Now, why? No idea. No idea why. But that's what Hashem told us. He says, look, I understand how this works, and this is how you need to do it in order for it to work. Just do what I tell you to do, and it'll work. Do I understand why that if tefillin is just below the hairline instead of above it, that a person all of a sudden hasn't fulfilled their mitzvah? No, I have no idea why. But Hashem does. And He told us this is what we got to do. So if we are aware of what we need to do, even if we don't understand why, we should at least have the appreciation for understanding that it is of great significance, and the ability to grow and bring down all this holiness that He's been describing can only happen if we do it exactly the way Hashem describes for us to do it. All right, very good. We'll stop here, and Mitzvah Hashem, we'll see everybody later today and next week. All righty, have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hard thing to understand, like when you're faced with a decision,